guys, it's Sandy with Crafty Stamp Co. and I have another card today from the Crafty Crew Kit that's coming out in May. The pre-order window opens April 1st and runs through the 15th. Shipping will begin on May 5th. This kit is just adorable. It has a travel theme and everything in it, from the stamps to the stencil to the pattern paper, is just perfect. I've done a couple cards with Meadow and her black hair, so this one I decided to go a little bit lighter on her and mix up my colors a bit. All right, let's get started. We're going to start with the background on this card. I've got a piece of the pattern paper. It's actually my favorite print from the collection. And I've got my stencil, which is called Around the World. I've got that stuck down on my little sticky mat here. I'm going to take some Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink, and I'm just going to go around that stencil, laying in that neat little globe pattern with the jet flying around it. I've dusted up the edges of that pattern paper with my ink, and now I'm going to just go back in with some watered down ink and just kind of splatter that whole piece of paper. I'm going to start off with her skin. I'm using Copic markers in E00, E11, and E21. And if you've watched any of my videos, I always say that I start with my lightest color and I saturate my paper completely with that, and then I go back in with my mid and stronger tones, and that just helps me blend a little bit. I always marvel at the people that can just do the 3 different colors and blend them together. That's just that's just not how I color. So I'm starting with my lightest, I'll go into my medium color, and then I go into my darkest color and just do a little bit more shading with that. When I color Meadow's hair, especially when she's got it up in ponytails, I break it up into parts. So I'm going to start with the front part that's got the little bangs and the side pieces that hang down. The Copic markers I'm going to be using are E50, E51, and E53. Again, we're going lightest into the darkest colors. To color her scooter, I have used YG61, my lightest color. Next color, G82. And then my darkest color is going to be G24. I'm just going to do all of those body areas on her scooter, and then I will just use some of the other colors to highlight, like the seat and the little reflectors and the little headlamp. Her little pink skirt is R20, my lightest color. Medium color is R21, and R22 is my darkest color. Her little shorts are going to be blue, so I am using blue 000, I'm sorry, B000, B20, nope, B41, and B52. I need to get my colors straight here. I also used a little bit of that blue up on her blouse, keeping most of it white though. I'm just using the B000 as more of a shadow than anything else. For the other colors that I'm using on her, the seat and like her little headlamp and some of the reflectors, I use C2, C3, and C4. And then I wanted her tires to have a little bit different shade of a gray. So I used, let me see, T1, T3, and T5. The basket is just your typical browns. The ones I always use, E33, E35, and E37. I might have touched up the top of that headlamp with a little bit of yellow, and then part of the reflectors with just a touch of red, and those colors would have been E14, E17, I'm sorry, R14 and R17. And that pretty much covers all of the coloring for our little meadow on the move. For the sentiment, I'm using the sentiment that's included in the die set. I also used the little cluster of flowers and stamped in the front and at the back of the sentiment. And then I just trimmed around those wildflowers and the sentiment itself. I also did a wee bit of coloring on that, nothing crazy coloring and not even very precise. I just laid in some of the greens and pinks and other colors that I used up on Meadow herself. I wanted to add a little bit of texture to the front of my card, so I'm using the organza ribbon that will come in the subscriber kit, along with a pink button that was in the January subscribers kit. And I'm just going to gather that organza ribbon along with some pink pearl cotton and tie that onto the back of my background then. I'm also going to go ahead and just use some liquid glue to adhere that piece to a piece of pink cardstock that's been cut to 5.5 by 4.25, typical A2 size. I wanted it to seem like Meadow was driving her little scooter through wildflowers. So I'm going to put that sentiment at the bottom so that the back wheel of the scooter is being covered by the flowers, while the front wheel of the scooter is on top of the flowers in the front. We'll go ahead and get those glued together. I like to have a little bit of dimension on my cards, so I am going to pop up Meadow on the front of this card. I've got some foam tabs adhered to the back of that, and then I'm going to go back after I've peeled off that protective tape and just put a little bit of glue. That gives me a little bit of barrier so that I'm able to wiggle around that piece before it gets permanently attached to the cardstock. Now, I'm pretty sure that Meadow is the kind of girl that likes just a wee bit of glitz and glamour. So we're going to add on a few little sparkle spots up in that top right-hand corner just to kind of balance things out. I might add another little one over towards the left. We'll get those glued on, and our card is just about finished. I have a piece of cardstock cut to 5.5 by 8.5. I'm going to score that at 4.25, and then I'm going to go ahead and fold that in half. I'm going to put some glue on the back of my card front, and then I'm going to adhere it to my card base. Also, on my card bases, I generally put another piece of white cardstock on the inside, and that's usually cut at 5.25 by 4, and that's just because I always feel like that back piece is really flimsy compared to everything that goes on the front of the card, that I just feel like it kind of balances out. So I pretty much always put in that extra piece of cardstock just to kind of fortify that back piece a little bit. And my card is completed. I didn't put a sentiment on the inside because I think this just makes the perfect note card. All right. Thanks so much for spending a little bit of your time today with me. Make sure you jump on over to the Crafty Stamp Co. website and get that pre-order in so you don't miss out on this fun little stamp set. All right, until next time, bye-bye.